Today we begin the 5th chapter of the Vimalakirti Sutra. We will also continue with the Vimalakirti Sutra tomorrow. The day after tomorrow is the day of the Buddha's descent from the God realms. I hope that everyone in all locations will take this day seriously. Please engage in more wholesome practices. What kind of wholesome practices should you do? That depends on your own situation. If your conditions and circumstances allow, Vajradharma friends can gather together in small groups to recite the name of Amitabha Buddha or the heart mantra of Amitabha. You could also recite the King of Aspiration prayer or practice other wholesome dharmas. All of these practices are important. As followers of our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, we should at the very least observe the 4 major festivals of the Buddha. These include the month of the Buddha's miraculous deeds, the day of the first turning of the Dharma wheel, the day of descent from the God realms, and the day of enlightenment. The day of enlightenment falls during the Vajrasattva Dharma assembly in the Sakya month. These specific times are extremely important. We Buddhists should pay close attention to them. As you know, any religious person anywhere in the world will have different ways of marking the special holidays of their founder. They find various ways to honor the occasion or hold different kinds of activities. Therefore, by utilizing these special days for prayer, meditation, and the accumulation of merit, you will find that within your own mind stream, powerful realizations and spiritual experiences will arise. So on such special days as these, I hope everyone will place even greater importance on their practice. Since I am letting you know ahead of time, please make some preparations tomorrow. I understand that for some of our Dharma friends, using the entire month of the descent month or spending all these days practicing wholesome Dharma can be quite difficult. For many practitioners, especially those who are lay people, life currently involves a lot of pressure. On top of that, everyone seems to be especially busy. In those cases, there is a certain level of difficulty. Nevertheless, I hope everyone will still take it seriously. There is one more thing. As I mentioned a couple of days ago, we should recite the heart mantra of Amitabha 300,000 times. Every year we aim to recite this heart mantra 300,000 times. I had originally suggested a 1-month time frame, but for some people 1 month might be a bit too short. For the people here on our side, we might not even need a full month. Many Dharma friends have already completed half of the recitation, so it should be fine. Wait, did I get the count wrong? The statistics are off, aren't they? So perhaps it isn't a very big problem. But for many people living in cities, it is a bit difficult. When we recited during the Vajrasattva Dharma assembly, the recitation period lasted for 3 months. So this year, let's also extend the period to 3 months. In any case, if you can recite it 300,000 times within 3 months, that averages to 100,000 per month, which should be doable. Reciting 100,000 per month means doing about 10,000 every 3 days. That shouldn't be a problem, right? I hope everyone will participate in this. If we dedicate the merit together, it becomes extremely great. We never know when our human life will come to an end. In this world, there are so many things to do. Some things get finished while others do not. But each person will leave this world once their karmic conditions ripen. When you leave this world, everything you painstakingly accumulated in life might not necessarily be of any use to you. However, the wholesome roots and merit you have gathered will always accompany you. This is the inconceivable power and merit of wholesome Dharma. Therefore, everyone should truly value this aspect of their practice. In the past, when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche held the Sukhavati Dharma Assembly, he gave a general empowerment of Amitabha at the Lay Practitioners Center. I am now offering this connection to all of you as well. Although we are online and might not receive the empowerment in the formal way, you can at least receive the blessing and the power of this connection. This also serves as a form of auspicious interdependence. Lately, all of us have been working very diligently to prepare ourselves for rebirth in Sukhavati. This is very important. There is one more thing to mention. What is it? It is the book Tales for Transforming Adversity. This is the German translation they have completed. Next, we will recite the transmission first for about 10 minutes. I will recite the transmission for the daily content of the Vimalakirti Sutra. Then I will explain the text for everyone.
Tenip Jordan the Jinjarujon the Kerala Kapsarva, Jaurjon, Japur, Kyodalutan Patraman, Petropi, Nander Sonsu, Jawarti Sora, Jordan de Latsam Patramami Petrobana, Ninjam Kurva Zamu Tsirlar Puparat Jigba, Sig Merjetan, Zopi, Sigjabalam Kebar, Puparjim Chapa, Simjan Tamchila, Kondroama. Cheap of Lodan Damba, Shantu Senqui give a time to the Tsarif Shimba, Shantu Sanwa Tamchetan, Santi Tamchiti, Son on elation the Jipa, the Tamchiti on a number of Lobalam, Kepa, Mumbrishiba Chimbur, number Zimba. Taptan, Shervale, Niperum, Jonwa, Chuji Oyanso, Nisam Mamchibi, Oyer Mamchibi, Shoyerti, Tambi Choktoba. Chuji Oyan, Gopa Chigba, Nambam Tayebi, Gopa Churtumbelam Keba, Semjan Tamchiti, Wombu Gopa, Tober, Gepalan, Sarvalam Keba, Tavlam Kepa, Toba Kunda Chepa, Tiba Tanlava Bepa Toba, De Go Chung, Gocha Chungim, Governor Menikyo, Wonjang, Sanjiti, Shinji Lapenderum, Chide, Yantaba Cherta, Jandam, Tucherta, Jandam Shepherd Sarlo, Tenin Kur Tena, Jantu Senhua, Tetagatan, Yantu Chimbo, Tetagatan, Gapshindan, Sambadan, Jitin Kyongwadan, Lai Verdan, Li Vumo Tetang, Dunyam to Semso, Jahurjun Kirwadan, Kivatamba Terni, Mebalandr, Chujabak Tam Chimbo, Dubmazavrum Jong. Nyamte, Tene, Shanchu Senhua, Shanchu Senhua, Gatong, Yantur, Naviadan, Gapshindan, Samban, Jitin Kyongwa, Shindan Mawa, Li Ver, Garton, Chag Shindan, Mambo, Chunyam Bishirdan, Jahurjun Kirvi, Shivjin Dong. Tene, Jahurjun Kirva, Shanchu Senhua, Tetagdan, Yantu Chimbo, Tetagdan, Gapshindan, Sambadan, Jitin Kyongwa, Tetagdan. Laive de Tamchiti Yonsu, Kurum Dunda Darte, Yangbi, Sa Chimbo, Yangba, Chongchir Chimbo, Jigso, Tene, Lazamba Chamame Petrove, Yamda, Chaban Yamda, Semte, Jahurjon, the Kirwan Kurmambo, the Gongo, the Kim, the Stone of Shinji Lapo, Yamte, Di, Kim, the Stone of Shinji Labne, Tena, Gova, Yang, Meto, Chakang, Chamame Petrova. Chakang la Chamame Petrova, Nava la Nyarjang. Digbi Churchibo de Matoba, de la Chagam Chig Gammer, Tankan Marno, Ninja Urjon, Gervan Korjitama Petrova, Nikalavertin, Donte, Hagni, Nanda Guada, Kimte, Storm Tonte, Tenar Goayang Medo, Chamame Petrova, Neda, Jean, Nyarjan, Digbo, Church, Chigbo Tele, Jan, Chugam, Chigam, Stan Mamtongo, the Nilazam Bechamam Petrova, Jaurjon, Gervalam, Tonte, Tonin, Derkichi, Meso, Javra. Lokprogonso, Javrashim the Lokprogonso, Hungun Magon, Mamton, Matu Baram Tongo, Javrji Meba, Kim the Chirkazerva Division, the Gungwatena, Chi Mogongo, Ganswate, and Chi Mandrogo, Teji Virgina, Mawana Gor, Mawa Shiba, Mechan, Sonwagon, Dro Shiba, Meda, Gantonga, and Syrian, Darsha, Maim Bishero, Kivatamba Kut, Zotam. Zut Tamba Kyoto Zotam Sarvam, Kyoti Kam, Ranam Manjikam, Kyoti Natele, Shungam, Martiagam, Jordan Dejan, Chola, Nopa, Chongam, Nyongam, Nava, Nyongam, Kyopa, Yangam, Soadan, Stopdan, Devadan, Kana, Matuvadan, Dever, Ragbala Nesam, Sonso, Kimda Kyoti, Nanda, Chile, Shone, Chirtu Lona, Chirter, Ne, Chizamna, Javerin, Girir. Yeah.
Today we begin our study of the Vimalakirti Sutra. We have already covered a portion of this Vimalakirti Sutra. I ask everyone now to pull your scattered thoughts back together. Focus your mind on studying, reflecting, and practicing. Regard these activities as the most important thing in your life. Some people treat studying and practice as merely attending a class. In our worldly life, for example, when we listen to a training course or a class on worldly knowledge, if we approach the Dharma in that same way, I personally believe we have not yet fully understood the true value that the Dharma possesses. This is because many worldly classes can only resolve matters related to our current livelihood and our immediate survival in this present life. But the Dharma not only brings great benefit to our current life, but more importantly, it benefits us across all future lives. By planting essential wholesome roots in our mind stream, we can reach a state of being free from suffering and finding true happiness. So given the profound meaning of the Dharma, everyone should cultivate a sense of longing and realize how rare this opportunity is. You should also have a joyful mind and a kind of enthusiasm. Regardless of what we are doing, if there is no passion, enthusiasm, or personal connection, then the task likely will not be done very well. When some Buddhists first begin their path, their enthusiasm is like a raging fire burning extremely fiercely. At times, their faith burns so strongly that it seems irrepressible. There is no stopping it. It burns continuously, day and night. Then, after some time has passed, worn down by the years and buffeted by the wind and rain of life, it seems that in the end, that fire is at its last breath. Only a tiny little flame remains, flickering on and off in the howling wind. This kind of situation does happen. I feel that this is very unreasonable. No matter what religion you join or what profession you enter, the initial aspiration you had at the start should be maintained with that same warmth until the very end. Maintaining that enthusiasm is very important. I have met some people in the worldly sphere, for example, those running an enterprise or working on various projects, whose enthusiasm and mental state always seem to stay incredibly vigorous and courageous. I believe that this kind of spirit is truly vital. Some Buddhists, especially some seasoned veterans, were truly dedicated at the beginning toward the Dharma, the Buddha, and their practice. They would not rest during the day or sleep at night. Sleeping even 3 or 4 hours felt like a waste of time. They just wanted to practice continuously without eating, drinking, or sleeping. But eventually, as time wore on, that enthusiasm slowly began to fade. It retreats a little bit more every day until it becomes extremely cold and indifferent in the end. This is really not acceptable. This includes some of our volunteers. Whatever work you do, you should see it through to the end, while maintaining a positive sense of enthusiasm. I think this is very important. Currently, some volunteers here and volunteers in other locations may start out saying they definitely want to participate. Among Tibetans, there is a common gesture with sleeves. When we are about to do something, we first roll them up. I'm coming, I'll join, let me join. But in the end, they say they can't do it and roll their sleeves back down. Because they feel cold, they slowly retreat. The courage they had at the beginning is gone. Practice is exactly the same. This includes Dharma masters and tutors. Your interest in the Dharma must remain strong. Not long ago, I spoke with some teachers at our schools. Many teachers now have very little enthusiasm for teaching. They feel they are only doing it to earn a living, or are barely muddling through. They go to the classroom to teach every day without any real feeling of their own. Of course, if a teacher do not have feeling for the subject, then the students will certainly have no feeling either. That is 100% certain. If the teacher cannot be energized, then the students cannot possibly be vigorous. So during our study, I hope everyone will pay constant attention to their own state of mind. Otherwise, some of us seem to be in a state regarding our studies, where we are neither truly dead nor truly alive. We are not quite dead, yet not quite alive. We just listlessly drift along in this field. If you just muddle through in this dazed way, then perhaps merely not having cut off your life force is considered not too bad. You are still alive and still pretty good, but there might not be much difference between you and someone who has already died. In that case, it is not very good. This is the first point I wanted to mention. During these few days, I also hope that whether we are studying the Vimalakirti Sutra or other courses, you should begin to draw your scattered mind back. Be single-minded and show great concentration. Although I know that my teaching is not very good, the content of Buddhism is supremely excellent. The content of the Vimalakirti Sutra is something I believe none of us would deny. So as we study together in this way, if my teaching is not good, you are welcome to raise your hand. That part was wrong. Hey, please do not go on. Then I will stop to listen while you explain your view. After that, we can continue with the teaching. This is all perfectly fine. Many places in the West have this kind of relatively open mindset. Now let us begin the lesson. Since we are moving forward, everyone should take a moment to review the first 4 chapters of the Vimalakirti Sutra. Let's look back at what we have covered. The first chapter explains that a pure mind leads to a pure land, which is the Buddha land. This is the preface, which also explains the causes and conditions. It also presents the ultimate goal of this sutra, which is that a pure mind leads to a pure land. After that comes the skillful means chapter. It describes the incredibly inconceivable skillful means used by Vimalakirti the layman to propagate the Dharma. His approach to skillful means is something that is truly worth learning for all of us. The third is the disciples chapter. The 10 great arhats go to inquire about the illness of Vimalakirti the layman. Then we have the Bodhisattvas chapter. In the Bodhisattvas chapter, for example, we have already discussed Bodhisattva Maitreya and Radiance Ornament Youth. We also covered Maintains the World Bodhisattva and Elder's Son Good Virtue. Several bodhisattvas have already been introduced. These previous 2 chapters mainly focus on the Mahayana and Hinayana paths. They show how the famous disciples of the Buddha were sent one by one to visit Vimalakirti the layman. But every disciple received different kinds of teachings. So the Vimalakirti Sutra is indeed very logically structured. Originally, a sutra is usually quite different from the way we teach Buddhist logic. Its logic is often scattered and not entirely sequential. Like the Diamond Sutra or the Prajnaparamita Sutra, different content appears in many different places. But in this sutra, as we often see in Buddhist sutras, the content is compared to a specific image. It is like placing many gold and silver treasures inside a treasury. There is coral here, gold there, and silver there. However, the structure here is basically built layer by layer. At least the content we covered before follows this pattern. Some great masters of the past, in their explanations, identified the earlier portions as mainly teaching about taming and subduing the mind, and the later portions mainly focus on gathering and embracing sentient beings. Some explain it in this way. But regardless of that, let us continue following the content of the sutra text. As I mentioned earlier, our current teaching of the Vimalakirti Sutra is extremely famous within the Han Buddhist tradition. In Tibetan Buddhism as well, many great masters have cited and taught this Dharma. In the Han tradition, great masters placed immense importance on it in ancient times. So I am passing on this teaching to you through this transmission. Perhaps we cannot see its full impact right now, but in the future, many great masters will continue to propagate it. Having such an excellent transmission will greatly benefit your own practice and propagation of the Dharma. It will also deepen your understanding of Buddhism. Therefore, we continue with the teaching today. If everyone listens to the Buddha's Sutra with a joyful mind, it is the most meaningful thing we can do in our lives. We might think that many other things in life are meaningful. For example, some people earn a lot of money, while others find the things they have always desired. Some people achieve great success in their careers, and others feel proud of their appearance or high status in society. People have all kinds of pursuits. But personally, perhaps because of my faith and belief and my lifelong education in Buddhist studies, I feel that as I reach middle age and look toward the end, nothing is more meaningful than what we have gained through the Dharma. Whether it is realization, experience, or blessings, this is truly the most significant part of life. So I hope those who listen to the Dharma will not just eat or work while listening. I notice that some Dharma friends in the teaching hall are listening properly and respectfully. However, some friends who are listening online are eating and drinking, while others are browsing the web or looking at their phones. In those cases, it can be hard to understand the sutras even with focus. It is certainly not possible with a scattered mind. Even when we watch a worldly drama, missing a key detail, like a character's expression or a single line of dialogue, can make it impossible to follow the rest of the plot. For example, if you miss a simple glance or a short sentence at the start, you might miss something central to the entire episode. So I also hope that you can focus unless there are very special circumstances. Of course, I understand some people might be working night shifts or have other unique situations. If there is truly no other way, listening while you work is also fine. But generally speaking, when you have time, the ideal situation is this. The more seriously you take this Dharma, the greater the blessings and benefits you will receive. The less seriously you take it, and if you treat it as something to just glance at, casually watching it in your daily life, as if you were watching a talk by a worldly person, thinking I will watch for a bit and listen for a bit, then clicking it off when you do not want to listen anymore, and playing a pop song instead, then who knows what will happen. Perhaps other programs would bring you even more benefit in that case. Well, I will not say more about this. Below, let us begin the teaching about Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva. The 5th chapter is Mañjuśrī's condolence visit. Everyone should know about Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva. Among the Buddha's disciples, even though the Mahayana and Hinayana disciples All have their own different merits. The most important point is that Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva is first in wisdom. In his manifest appearance, he takes the form of a bodhisattva. Of course, different sutras have different perspectives on this. In the Garland of Jewels, the 8 Great Bodhisattvas, which we translated before, the biography of Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva is the most extensive. So within it, it also mentions that some sutras, for instance, the Shurangama Sutra has mentioned, that Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva was a Buddha in the past, known as Nagavamsagara Buddha. There is such an account. In some sutras, he is also described as a future Buddha. Some sutras say he is a present Buddha, such as Anandamani Buddha or Universal Vision Tathagata. There are various accounts. Of course, in most Mahayana sutras, Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva manifests in the form of a youthful bodhisattva to awaken the wisdom of sentient beings. So if we want to understand Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva, in reality, he is not just what some individuals now, including some people in the West, they think of him as just a kind of manifestation of wisdom and see his sword as a symbol that cuts through ignorance. They use a kind of symbolism, a kind of representation to explain him this way. Actually, this is not the case. Although we can use the form of wisdom as a representation, in reality, Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva was a truly real bodhisattva who lived during the time of the Buddha, and such a bodhisattva later appeared at Wutai Mountain and among different groups of sentient beings. He appeared in various bodily forms to guide them. He is a real bodhisattva. Otherwise, some people in the West today seem not to fully understand the so-called Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. They do not particularly understand these beings. Precisely because they do not understand, when some of our great masters want to teach the Dharma to them, they are also worried. This is because some mythological stories in their religions might get mixed up with the mythological elements in Buddhism. They are afraid they would be conflated. And so they often say Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is just the meaning of purity, like a lotus, or that the Bodhisattva is a representation of great compassion, and that Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva represents wisdom cutting through ignorance. They see them as symbols like this. Everything is explained through symbolism and representation. In this way, for some people, explaining things using pictures might be easier to understand. Of course, we sometimes do this as well. But when speaking about the Buddha, the true story of the Buddha should be told well. It is not a legend, nor is it a mythological story. Then, when speaking about bodhisattvas, one should truly speak about the merits of the bodhisattvas. The underlying reasoning should be clearly explained. This is not only the case in our Buddhism. I have also heard some stories from other religions. Actually, in other religions, some stories have a mythological quality, while in other cases in human history, truly important historical events have indeed occurred. Therefore, any religion has very important stories and its own origins. Regarding these, we should respect the history and transmission of others. At the same time, we should also observe them very carefully ourselves. Otherwise, each of us has our own so-called bias. Where does this bias come from? In reality, our original views, back when we were young, were basically like a blank sheet of paper. We did not have any particularly distinct views. Later, through different forms of education and changes in the people and environment around us, different colored stories accumulated within our own consciousness. Eventually, these views became fixed. So sometimes we might think, for example, I am an atheist, or perhaps we were born into a theist family. In that case, from a young age, our world is shaped by the language and thinking of the people around us. At this point, what we think may not necessarily be correct. But in the end, it truly became like this. This is also something that is worth reflecting on for everyone. Do not assume that everything you think is absolutely true. You should not think that way. This is why the Buddha also said, do not accept my words just because I am the Buddha. Whether you are a monastic or a lay practitioner, do not accept it simply out of respect for me. Instead, you should accept it through your own wisdom. It is just like the process of refining gold. You should accept the teachings through this kind of rigorous process. This is a very important maxim in our Buddhism. So let us now continue with the lesson. Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva is like this. Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva is now making his appearance. Many people have been waiting for this. They look forward to seeing his appearance, as it should be very wonderful. This is because the previous disciples, one by one, returned in failure in the end, as there was simply nothing they could do. Let us see what happens when the elder Vimalakirti and Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva meet. At this point, the Buddha addressed Mañjuśrī you go inquire about Vimalakirti's illness. Before this, many Mahayana and Hinayana disciples had already gone. Although some parts were a manifestation, they received different wisdom and various teachings. In our process of study, many people, including myself, previously had a relatively shallow understanding of the Vimalakirti Sutra. This time, by relying on this gathering of karmic conditions, I am also very grateful to everyone. With this kind of karmic connection, we have truly focused on such a Mahayana sutra with our own awareness and have truly dug into its meaning. Because of this opportunity, one's understanding of this sutra, compared to what it was before, has risen to yet another level. At that time, the Buddha told Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva to go. Actually, this was a very good arrangement. If Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva had been sent at the very beginning, he likely would have asked everything quite clearly with his wisdom. It is hard to say if the others would have had a chance to appear. So at the start, from Sariputra and Mount Galyayana going, followed by 500 arhats and then the bodhisattvas. In the previous chapter, I seem to recall there were 4 bodhisattvas mentioned. I'm not entirely clear if there were other bodhisattvas as well. Our text is not very explicit about that. But I think since there were so many bodhisattvas in the assembly, it was certainly not just those 4. Many bodhisattvas likely went at that time. In the end, Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva came forward. Mañjuśrī addressed the Buddha, "World-honored one, that superior one is difficult to respond to. O Buddha, our teacher Sakyamuni Buddha, this superior one, this great superior layman Vimalakirti." Some translations use the term great being. He is extremely difficult to deal with. This is because so many bodhisattvas, Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas who had gone to inquire, all encountered certain difficulties. So Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva did not say at first, "It is no problem for me to go, rest assured I will handle it." To me, this is a very simple matter. Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva did not speak like that. He acknowledged that this superior one is truly exceptional. Some people say the term superior one in Buddhism originates from this point. I think Nanhuai-Chin or someone else has mentioned this as well. Regarding the term superior one, let me explain it to everyone. I noticed that in the Tibetan text, the equivalent for superior one is not very prominent. In versions like the Tang translation, it is called great being. As for the term superior one, it actually appears in more places than just the Vimalakirti Sutra. It has appeared in various other sutras and treatises as well. For example, in the Ekotarikagama of the Hinayana, it says, if we human beings reform our own minds and confess our faults, then such a person can be called a superior one. There is that kind of explanation. Also in the Vinaya text, Dasasadhyaya Vinaya, monastics are divided into 4 categories: coarse, turbid, middling, and superior. The character Q for coarse is sometimes written with 3 deer in Chinese character. It generally means rough or crude. So what is a coarse person? It is someone who has no sense of shame and understands neither the meaning nor the words. Such a person is called a coarse person. They have no shame and understand nothing. This is a coarse person. As for a turbid person, they have no sense of shame but do understand the meaning and words. The term turbid here is the same as in a degenerate age. One who has a sense of shame but does not understand the words or meaning is called a middling person. One who both has a sense of shame and understands the words and meaning, such a person is called a superior one. Each term has its own various explanations. Of course, when I speak of a superior one here, it does not only mean someone who is thoroughly proficient in the words and meanings. What is even more important is the quality of relinquishing oneself to benefit others. I looked at the Mahaprajaparamita Shastra, and in that text there is a very similar definition. If one can relinquish one's own pleasures and practice wholesome Dharma solely for the sake of all beings, this is called a superior one. This means abandoning all one's self-enjoyment and self-centered thinking to wholeheartedly practice wholesome Dharma for the sake of all beings. Such a person is called a superior one. This is similar to what we usually say about bodhisattvas. They do not seek happiness for themselves, but only wish for all beings to find joy. If you are always thinking of other beings, you can be called a superior one. Are those of us here superior ones? This is something worth examining ourselves. In our daily lives and through all our conduct, it is not really possible to never think of our own benefit at all. However, as Mahayana practitioners, we indeed need to constantly think of other beings.
Dangdani Serap Tamcha Tulaman Hobala Jesus Lawson Yondan Yamso Terla Tantra Tunchin Bamin Riverjo.
His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche composed a prayer of aspiration. This is one of those aspiration prayers. It says that from today and throughout all future lives, may I be embraced by the teacher and Yidam, become proficient in the 3 baskets of teachings, and ultimately be able to propagate the Dharma and benefit beings. We often recite this in the daily chant book at our Larunga when we make an aspiration like this. First, I must truly mean the aspiration. We pray that throughout all future lives, the teachers and Dharma protectors will embrace us. Without their guidance and embrace, it is truly difficult. Without the blessings of the teacher and the Dharma protectors, relying only on one's own wisdom and ability will sometimes lead to difficulties in propagating the Dharma and benefiting beings. Based on my own experience in practice and my observations in life, I have seen that without the blessings of the teacher and the Dharma protectors, your teaching might be exceptionally good, and your wisdom might be quite fine, and many people may temporarily recognize and appreciate your work, but it is uncertain whether you can truly bring the activity of benefiting beings to maturity in the future. We just don't know if that success will last. This is why some people often say, oh, we should do things this way or that way. Regarding the teacher or the Dharma, they seem unsatisfied with everything. They think it should be done like this. According to my own thinking, it should be done this way. But if the task were actually put into your hands to do, without the blessings of the teacher and the Yidam, you might end in failure within just 2 or 3 years. That possibility will happen. So in our lives, our practice and our efforts to benefit others, if we want to become a true superior one, we really need the blessings of the Guru and the Yidam. A person without faith generally would not accept this. For someone without faith, they only believe in solid knowledge and material things that can be exchanged and obtained in a tangible way. Beyond that, an invisible power like blessings belongs to an extremely distant world. Generally speaking, they would not acknowledge it, and we do not require them to accept it either. But this is something worth considering for everyone. So as I was saying, Mañjuśrī said to the Buddha, world-honored one, that superior one, the elder Vimalakirti, I hear he is quite formidable, so let us see how it goes. In what way is he formidable? This is discussed in the following text. From Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva's perspective, his description of Vimalakirti is actually a kind of praise. It also serves as a personal introduction to him. Usually when we go out to give teachings, there is often someone who introduces us, but some introductions are just random talk and are not entirely accurate. When truly introducing someone, it is appropriate to focus on their wisdom and their actual work in propagating the Dharma and benefiting others. It shouldn't be about when they were born, what they eat or what they wear, but nowadays people probably just like to hear those kinds of things. He then gave an introduction to the elder Vimalakirti. Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva said, what is Vimalakirti like? He has profoundly attained the true characteristic, and he is good at explaining the essentials of the Dharma. His eloquence is unhampered and his wisdom is unhindered. He says that Vimalakirti has deeply understood the ultimate reality of all phenomena. As we have seen earlier, he has indeed profoundly penetrated the true nature of all things. Not only has he mastered this himself, but he is also skilled at proclaiming it to beings with whom he has a karmic connection. He teaches all these essential points of the Dharma correctly, and in accordance with the individual capacities of different beings. While he is speaking, his eloquence is completely unhampered without any gaps or interruptions. Whether it is in debate or in terms of his mastery of words and meanings in all aspects, no one can break through his profound wisdom. His wisdom is continuous and without any obstruction whatsoever. Such is the nature of this bodhisattva. Some other translation versions might differ slightly here. For example, regarding the phrase, he is good at explaining the essentials of the Dharma, some Sanskrit and Japanese translations provide further nuance. In those versions, it sometimes says that he is skillful at proclaiming both general and special Dharma. Other interpretations mention his ability to explain things by dividing or combining them as needed. It seems these specific nuances also exist in the Sanskrit source. The terminology in the Tibetan version is also quite similar. The phrase, good at explaining the essentials of the Dharma, might differ slightly across versions, but in reality the core meaning remains the same. His ability to be good at explaining the essentials of the Dharma is a quality we often discuss as the term good teaching frequently appears in various Buddhist contexts. Even if we have penetrated the true characteristic of all phenomena, only some are truly skilled at teaching it and proclaiming that truth to others. There are others who, despite having reached a deep internal understanding and having achieved a very high level of practice, are still not very skillful when they try to teach the Dharma to others. They often fail the moment they try to share their knowledge publicly. This is a point I have been reflecting on lately. This applies to all our lay and monastic teachers and Dharma friends. If we simply become bookworms, who can recite endless scriptural and logical citations, that is a good thing on one level, but on another level we must understand the capacities of sentient beings. It is very important to be skillful in our interactions with others. Sometimes we have sent out Dharma teachers in whom we had great hopes, but after they arrived at their destination, they couldn't even stay in a monastery for 3 days. They offended everyone and came running back to us. Then they lost all desire to teach the Dharma at all. It was like they went into battle and retreated in defeat. They felt so frightened that they kept looking back in fear. They thought, wow, I am finally back home safely. So sometimes there might be issues in how we conduct ourselves. Some teachers call this mountain valley culture. They mean it is a narrow mindset cultivated in a tiny mountain valley. Larungar is indeed a small mountain valley. Actually, that is not really the case. Many people should be successfully trained here in this valley of Larungar. There are many who have made great contributions to the whole world. Whether they are Tibetan, Han Chinese, or from other ethnic groups, truly remarkable great masters have emerged from here. That is true now, and there will certainly be even more in the future. But you can observe that sometimes teachers and practitioners from other places seem more accommodating. In everything they do and in their general conduct, they manage things very well. Here, some individual teachers are indeed very good. Whether in worldly matters or in the Dharma, they possess both skillful means and the aspiration to guide others. Therefore, when we use language to proclaim the Dharma, we should look to Mipham Rinpoche's treatise on the modes of a ruler. There is a specific chapter on examining one's speech. I hope everyone will take the time to learn this. True good speaking will not cause harm to oneself or to others, and it truly brings benefit to all beings. The Dharma Guptaka Vinaya says, one who speaks well brings no distress upon oneself and does not encroach on others. This is called good speaking. This is what good speaking truly means. So what exactly is good speaking? On one hand, your own words and conduct will not cause you any suffering. On the other hand, you will not bring vexation or pain to others. Even if someone only attends a single class, they will receive immense benefit through your skillful words. For some of us, after teaching or attending just one session, the gains are so significant that they remain unforgettable for a lifetime. In my own life experience, I have found this to be true. I only met some of the past great masters of Tibetan Buddhism once, and only attended a single class of theirs. I just listened to one teaching, but later on, the blessings from that one meeting were truly immense. So I want to share something with all of you here. Going forward, penetrating the profound ultimate reality is very important, but communicating skillfully through language is even more essential. Regardless of whether you have the status of a teacher, as practitioners living in this world, we must be careful. As Mipham Rinpoche mentioned, if one does not speak well, most of the relationships we have with loved ones or enemies stem primarily from how we use language. Language is extremely critical. It is the bridge of communication between people. As people in the world say, language is the primary tool for communication. If you do not master your speech, a single word can offend countless people. Therefore, I hope everyone here who is listening now, whether you are a lay person or a monastic, will not be overly confident when sharing the Dharma. Don't just think, oh, my teaching is definitely perfect. Everyone will surely appreciate what I say. We shouldn't think that way. We must constantly observe ourselves. We need to ask what our actual capacity for teaching is. That self-observation is very important. Regarding the term wisdom is unhindered, the Tibetan version seems to explain it as having wisdom that is free from aversion toward sentient beings. This is an unhindered wisdom that is free of anger toward any being. That is another way to explain it. Some explanations further clarify these terms. Regarding his eloquence is unhampered and his wisdom is unhindered, unhampered eloquence refers to the conventional level, while unhindered wisdom refers to the ultimate level. There are some interpretations that frame it this way. The text says he completely understands all the deportments of the Bodhisattvas, and he has entered into all the secret storehouses of the Buddhas. From the perspective of benefiting others, all the deportments and all the activities of the bodhisattvas are things he knows like the back of his hand. He is extremely skillful in propagating the Dharma and benefiting beings. The Tibetan version mentions both Buddhas and bodhisattvas, though some versions might not include both. The secret state of purity and equality without duality of all Buddhas and bodhisattvas is something he has fully entered. This is described from the perspective of self-benefit. As for the layman Vimalakirti himself, he should be fully proficient in all the profound secret storehouses of the bodhisattvas. He has thoroughly mastered every single one of them. He has entered into all of them. He has subjugated the host of Maras, including what we often call the four kinds of Mara, such as Deva Mara and the aggregates Mara. He has subdued all demonic forces. Then the text says he disports himself in the numinous penetrations. With all these various supernatural powers, Master Sengzhao explains this as entertaining himself. This means his use of supernatural powers is like a game to him. He manifests these powers among sentient beings without any hindrance or obstruction. He has already attained perfection in his wisdom and skillful means. Both have reached the other shore, because when one possesses both wisdom and skillful means, guiding sentient beings actually becomes quite easy. There is a very profound line in the Maharatnakuta Sutra that says, "Observing this world as if it were an apparition, the wise one wanders without attachment." When a bodhisattva reaches a certain level of realization, they observe everything in the world as dreamlike and illusory. At this point, they do not have any obstructions whatsoever. No matter where they go, there is no clinging or attachment. As I have mentioned before, one of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok's teachings says that if one truly has the wisdom of realizing emptiness and acts with an altruistic mind, then by relying on the blessing of Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva, one can roam this world freely. In such a state, you might witness especially sorrowful events or very joyful ones, but you will not cling to any of it. So I think some of us here should aim to truly understand the dreamlike and illusory nature of things. Then you will see that this world is not truly real. I have noticed that when we speak of dreamlike and illusory, some people might feel the Buddhist meaning behind it is just describing something vague and insubstantial. Actually, that is not the case at all. Dreamlike and illusory has a deeper and even more important layer of meaning. It implies that these things have a very special kind of attractiveness. For example, when we are in a dream, even though the dream is false, before we wake up, we follow our habitual tendencies and treat the dream as real. If we enter an illusory world, even if we know it is an illusion, it still possesses a certain allure. We are often unwilling to leave it. Look at some young people today. Many people are like this now. When a new film comes out, they feel they must go watch it. Some people do not have money, but they will even borrow money just for watch a movie at the cinema. Others will go without eating, drinking, or sleeping just to engage with it. Even though they clearly know it is just an illusion, they are still drawn to it. Many young people today enter into these especially enchanting worlds. This is the power of that attractiveness. The reason the Buddha describes our world this way is that we also know, when we examine it with wisdom, this world is indeed an illusion. Everything in the world, without exception, is illusory and dreamlike. But until we have truly awakened, we are unable to free ourselves from its grip. On this point, we should not misunderstand. It's not that dreamlike and illusory just means emptiness or nothingness. It is not like that at all. In reality, it has its own very real illusory attractiveness. This illusory allure has already drawn in countless people. When you are pulled in, you might not even realize it. You remain completely absorbed in it. In this passage, there is also something mentioned in the Tang translation. If it is convenient, you can take a look at that text. It describes his skillful means as being without obstruction and says he has attained the supremely wondrous Dharmadhatu. In reality, these questions and answers involving Vimalakirti cannot be handled with just ordinary simple words. Simple language is simply not enough to match him. Nevertheless, I will go. Even though it is as described, I will accept the Buddha's sagely purport, and I will proceed to inquire about Vimalakirti's illness. The term sagely purport used here can also be understood as the sacred command of the Dharma. However, in the Tibetan and other versions, as well as in Kumarajva's translation, the specific word for blessing was generally not yet in use. That term only appeared in later translations. So the true meaning of this passage is that although the layman Vimalakirti possesses such remarkable wisdom and skillful means. Many people before Mañjuśrī, while listening to him, found it very difficult to respond. Ordinary language simply cannot match him. But despite all of this, since the Buddha has requested it, I will go. I will go and inquire about the illness of the layman Vimalakirti. Regarding this middle section, it would be even better if you can cross-reference other matching versions. This concludes what we were discussing. This covers the previous portion of the text. Since he had already agreed to go, thereupon the bodhisattvas and great disciples in the assembly, along with Indras, Brahmas, and the four heavenly kings, as well as many other humans and gods, all thought to themselves. At that moment, this thought occurred to all of them. Back in the 1970s, there was a bard who specialized in the epic of King Gesar, a well-known one named Kasang Trawa. Whenever he sang about King Gesar, he would ask where King Gesar was, as if he were describing the king's thoughts at that very moment. In those moments, he was very expressive. Not long ago, I heard a recording of his singing. It had a very special blessings. Of course, if you do not understand Tibetan, you might not feel much in some places. But at that time, religious policies had just begun to open up. Right at that beginning stage, His Holiness Jigme Pansok often said that this bard's recitation of the epic of King Gesar created a very good auspicious connection for the flourishing of the Dharma. He was a layman from the Qinghai region. He has been passed away for many years now. But when I first arrived at Larungar, at that time he would often tell the story. While reciting the biography, he did not just strictly follow the text. He seemed to truly be present on the scene himself. He would ask what King Gesar was thinking at that moment, as if he were right there. I have one of those recordings here. When it is convenient, I will let you all watch it. You might not feel much when you see it. You might watch it and then soon forget. So at this point in the text, all the gods, humans and bodhisattvas were thinking that Mañjuśrī is about to go. Now these two great beings, Mañjuśrī and Vimalakirti, will have a discussion. Since they are having a dialogue together, they will certainly explain a wondrous Dharma. It is a collision of two people's wisdom, creating the true sparks of skillful speech. It will surely be something extremely wonderful. So everyone at that time was especially expectant. Perhaps in that era, everyone placed great importance on such collisions of wisdom. In our current era, people seem more concerned with who won or lost and similar matters. This is because we live in a material age, an age that is especially attached to wealth and money. Even when I was very young, people placed great value on wisdom. But now it seems this world increasingly values what is visible and tangible. People do not necessarily value these other aspects as much. But at that time, everyone was tremendously expectant, hoping to witness a truly wonderful scene. At that time, there were 8,000 bodhisattvas, 500 shravakas, and 100,000 gods who all wanted to follow along. They all wanted to accompany Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva. They wanted to be present at the inquiry about the illness. Some of them might have just been spectators. Not all of them were truly involved. Some had heard that Mañjuśrī and Vimalakirti would have a dialogue, and everyone was paying close attention. Like what we now call a curious crowd watching the drama. People often described it that way in the past, but we should not put it like that, as many of them were bodhisattvas. We definitely cannot say that. They were certainly realized beings. Though a few years ago, people said this often. They were just there at the scene, perhaps without any specific thoughts or aims of their own. They were just following the crowd and going along with the flow. They all followed him. Mañjuśrī and the congregation of bodhisattvas and great disciples, with the gods reverentially surrounding them, then entered where? They then entered the great city of Vaiśālī. Everyone was in a vast and magnificent procession. As we see, there were 8,000 bodhisattvas and 500 shravakas. In a large modern sports arena, such a crowd could perhaps still fit, generally speaking. When you visit the site of Vaiśālī today, it is actually not that large. So it is interesting to consider how they all fit there at that time. Sometimes in Tibetan history we also find similar accounts. For example, in the areas surrounding certain monasteries, there have been cases of hundreds of thousands of monastics gathered, but some of these figures might be symbolic. Some may be what we normally call thousands upon 10,000s or numberless. There are also expressions of that kind. It was a very important occasion, so everyone went. At that time, the elder Vimalakirti thought to himself, and he already knew, now Mañjuśrī and a great congregation are coming. He knew so many were coming. Then with his numinous power and blessing, The Tibetan version also mentions blessing. Relying on his numinous power and blessing, he emptied out his room, removing his furnishings and his servants. Through his blessing, everything became empty. He removed the vessel world and the world of sentient beings. He left only a single couch. Beyond this, everything was gone. As we mentioned before, he had a very magnificent and dignified chamber. He used his power to bless the entire space. Of course, we can discuss some of this later. Why did he leave only one bed? Why did everything else disappear? For example, the fact that all his people are gone is a representation of the selflessness of person. Since all other things are also gone, this is a representation of the non-existence of phenomena. So why did he leave one bed? This is the support for nirvana. Each detail has a different symbolic meaning. He left only a single couch, and he himself reclined on account of his illness. He did this in the manner of a sick person. In paintings of this scene, we often see Vimalakirti lying down just like this. So this is also a kind of manifestation. Vimalakirti appeared to have great wealth, including his many various followers and retinue. In reality, he has total freedom and can enjoy them, but he can also instantly transform it all into emptiness. It is just like the accounts of Songtsen Gampo. There were stories of him killing people at the borders. When people did not understand this, they were told that it was actually an illusory army killing illusory people. Sometimes the realm of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is indeed inconceivable. From the perspective of a worldly person, Vimalakirti is a layman with many followers and great wealth. But through his power of meditative concentration, it can instantly become empty. True spiritual teachers or bodhisattvas in this world can also create such manifestations. Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva had by then arrived in Vaiśālī, entering the empty house of Vimalakirti. He came into his room. He saw that the room was empty, completely devoid of anything at all. There was only Vimalakirti, lying alone on a single couch. The manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are very profound. I've seen some modern performances of this, and sometimes they are not quite accurate, but they are still acceptable. We cannot simply deny or affirm them, can we? At this time, Vimalakirti saw Mañjuśrī and the others arrive. When they entered, he said, "Welcome, Mañjuśrī. You have come with the characteristic of not coming. You see with the characteristic of not seeing." Their interaction is quite interesting, isn't it? It is not like how we ordinary people interact. Ordinary people would just say welcome. They would offer food and drink, but there was nothing to eat or drink there. Everything had been made empty. Nothing was left. He had manifested the room in this way. Vimalakirti greeted him by saying welcome. Actually, the term he used for welcome carries a specific meaning. It refers to a very warm and sincere greeting. It shows the respect Vimalakirti had for Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva. He first says, coming with the characteristic of not coming. From the ultimate level, there is no such thing as coming or not coming. But on the conventional level, Mañjuśrī has indeed come here with his many followers. From the ultimate level, he says, with the characteristic of not seeing, their meeting and encounter is also not inherently established. It does not exist. Even the act of seeing is not truly there. But on the conventional level, Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva and Vimalakirti the layman have already met face to face in this empty room. In the Tibetan version, I should check if other editions also include this, but in Tibetan it says hearing with the characteristic of not hearing. It means not hearing yet hearing. In the ultimate sense, there is nothing to be heard. However, at the conventional level, the words they exchanged at that time could be heard. This perspective is also found when some great masters of the Han Buddhist tradition explain it. Their explanations are somewhat similar to what I just described. For instance, Master Zhiji of the Tiantai school suggested that simply dividing it into ultimate and conventional nature is not quite right. He believed it should be explained using the Tiantai method of the 4 kinds of inexpressibility. For example, the inconceivable nature of arising from arising, the inconceivable nature of arising from non-arising, and the inconceivable nature of non-arising from non-arising. This is similar to the explanation methods found in the Yogacara school. They have their own specific terminology and ways of explaining these concepts. In any case, such coming and going cannot be established within the true nature of reality. As we often say, the Diamond Sutra states, a Tathagata comes from nowhere and goes nowhere, therefore is called Tathagata. A Tathagata has no place from which they come and no place to which they go. This is what is meant by the word Tathagata. The terms Buddha and Tathagata are primarily used from the perspective of ultimate reality. meaning they come from nowhere and go nowhere. So we can understand the passage here in the same way. Then Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva immediately replied after seeing Vimalakirti the layman. He said, "So it is, retired scholar. Great retired scholar Vimalakirti, what you say is exactly right." "Why is it right?" He says, "If one has come, there is no more coming. If someone has already arrived, they cannot come again as the event has passed. If they have not yet come, the unborn cannot perform the act of coming. Even in the process of coming, the present moment cannot be grasped, so they cannot come. If one has gone, there is no more going. If one has already gone, they cannot go again because the act has ceased. If one has not yet gone, there is no way for them to go. And in the very process of going, it is also impossible to go." This is like the second chapter of the root stanzas of the Middle Way, which observes coming and going. That which has gone, there is no going. That which has not yet gone, there is also no going. Apart from what has gone and not yet gone, in the going, there is also no going. The chapter on the six senses says, "Seeing cannot see, and non-seeing also cannot see. What has already gone cannot go. What has not gone also cannot go. Beyond these two, how could there be another going? There is none." In the past, when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok taught the root stanzas of the Middle Way, we would often debate about going and not going when we met on the path. We used to start our conversations with each other using this specific citation. Why is this the case? Because to come is to come from nowhere, and to go is to proceed nowhere. That which can be seen is then invisible. So seeing and not seeing are essentially the same. Right at that moment, he was responding to Vimalakirti by showing that nothing can be obtained. There is no going and no coming. Even the act of seeing is completely unobtainable. Then he said, "But enough of this matter. For now, let us set this aside and not debate it further," because they had been debating from the perspective of coming and going since they arrived. Then he said, "But enough of this matter. Let us temporarily set these discussions aside. I came here to inquire about your illness, not to engage in debate. Retired scholar, can this illness be forborne? Retired scholar Vimalakirti, I am here to visit you because of your illness. I have been commissioned by the Buddha. I am here to see how you are doing physically. How is your illness now? Is it bearable for you?" When looking at this phrase, it might seem a bit unusual, asking, "How is your illness?" Perhaps this is a traditional Indian way of speaking, just as some people greet each other by asking if they slept well. For Tibetans, the common greeting is Ning Sa Adi, which means, "Did you sleep well?" Then, as some of you know, many Han people greet each other by asking if they have eaten yet. Regarding the first kind of greeting, when we were in Northern Europe, people would ask if the weather is good or if it has been nice. So when addressing a sick person, from our modern perspective, asking "can you bear it" first might seem slightly blunt. Usually we ask how they are and if the illness is very serious. We also ask if the treatment is having any effect. In its treatment, is it diminished so as not to increase? Surely this illness will not become too serious. The world-honored one has made immeasurable courteous inquiries about you. The phrase immeasurable inquiries is also found in the Tibetan version. It is also present in the original Sanskrit. The Buddha inquired very earnestly about your body and your mobility. Are you feeling a bit better? Are your body and mind somewhat at ease? If we look at Xuanzang's translation here, it seems that in the Tang translation and others, Kumarajava only used the short phrase immeasurable inquiries. In reality, the Buddha asked about many different things. Specifically, he asked about the specific details of the illness. Regarding this point, for all of us here, every one of us might fall ill at some point. When asking about others, we also check to see how they are doing. When we encounter such situations ourselves, we should also maintain this perspective in our hearts. Specifically, when we fall ill, I read a teaching by Geshe Potoa. When it is convenient, I will post it on the Tibetan Weibo tomorrow. Potoa said that many things in this world do not happen suddenly or without reason. When people fall ill, they often think, "I should not have gotten sick, yet I am ill. I should not have died, yet I have died. I should not have had bad luck, yet I did." Most people tend to think this way. Actually, the reality is quite different. If you are meant to be ill, you are ill. If you are meant to die, you die. He explains that it is not a matter of luck. Birth, old age, illness, and death do not occur suddenly. If you do not wish to face birth, old age, illness, and death, then you must eradicate the root of birth. To eradicate birth, one must cut through the mental afflictions. And to cut through these afflictions, one must do battle with them. This realization is extremely important. So I believe this teaching is still very relevant for us today. When we fall ill, we might cry out, "Oh, I should not be sick." Why is this happening to me? When we are approaching death, we might wonder, am I about to die? I should not be dying yet. But every person's karma and conditions are different. As long as you possess this physical body, it is natural that you will fall ill and eventually die. This applies not just to us, but in reality to even the truly great masters. I have told the story of Master Shalabhadra from long ago. When Master Shalabhadra was over 100 years old, Xuanzang traveled to India for the scriptures and met him at Nalanda Monastery. When they met, Master Shalabhadra was already over 100 years old. Upon meeting Xuanzang, he wept with great sorrow. Then his attendant explained the situation. Xuanzang asked him, "Why is the master crying?" The attendant said, 3 years ago our teacher was gravely ill. At that time it is said that Avalokiteshvara or Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva appeared in person. The Bodhisattva said, "This illness is actually the manifestation of your past karmic force. In a past life, when you were a king, you caused harm to your subjects. Now because you are currently propagating the Dharma, the karmic results of the 3 lower realms have ripened as physical suffering in this human life. That is why you are experiencing such immense pain now." Master Shalabhadra then asked, "How can this suffering of mine be resolved?" The Bodhisattva replied, "In 3 years a monk from the great Tang will arrive. When you meet him, transmit the Dharma to him. Once you do that, your illness will cease." He had originally wanted to end his own life to escape the pain, but after Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva gave him this instruction, he waited patiently. When Xuanzang finally arrived, he wept out of relief and long-standing anticipation. He had been waiting for that moment for 3 years. Then he formally transmitted the Dharma to Xuanzang. Not long after that, it seems he demonstrated passing into parinirvana. So for us practitioners, truthfully, using the Dharma to face illness remains a very difficult task. Often we should be ill or we should die according to our past actions, while we can say these words. But in actual practice, when suffering truly falls upon us, it brings a certain degree of difficulty. This was also true even during the time of the Buddha. I recall in the Samyukta Agama, there was a monastic who was suffering from an extremely grave illness. He was so desperate that he wanted to take his own life. Then either Shariputra or Maudgalyayana, I believe it was Shariputra, personally went to offer him comfort. He asked, "How is your illness? Is it forbearable for you? Do you have any appetite for food now?" The monastic replied, "I am extremely ill. The pain is so intense that I want to use a blade to end it. I simply cannot go on." Then Shariputra told him, "Please do not do that. I will provide you with plenty of food, drink, material support, and medicine. I will also frequently bring many disciples to visit you." But he said, "I do not need any of those things. I am a venerable elder. I already have food, medicine, material wealth, and many disciples, but none of that helps. It is useless against this pain. The agony is so great that I just want to end my life." Later, Shariputra taught him extensive Dharma on the selflessness of persons, explaining that the eye is not the self and the ear is not the self. When someone is in that much pain, it is incredibly difficult. He shared teachings on emptiness and the selflessness of persons. But the monk said, "I understand all these teachings, yet they do not work for me. I cannot bear the suffering." In the end, he unfortunately did take his own life. So sometimes even for practitioners, taking one's own life is a very negative thing. But looking at the world today, whether it is mental or physical suffering, the number of people taking their lives is increasing. If our practice is even a little better, we should be able to avoid such an outcome. The spiritual consequences of suicide are quite grave. Look at the context here as well. It is also somewhat unclear what Vimalakirti's actual state is. Mañjuśrī asked him, "How are you doing with your illness?" The Buddha is also extremely concerned about you. "He is very concerned about you, Venerable Sir. When I was hospitalized before, there were also people who came, well, let us move on." Next, Mañjuśrī continues to question retired scholar Vimalakirti. What is the cause from which this illness arises? Has it been affecting you long? How long have you been sick? It must have been quite a while. I heard that previously many people, including kings and disciples, came to visit. Has it been several months already? When do you think this illness of yours will recover? How will it be extinguished? These were the questions he asked retired scholar Vimalakirti, and we will see how Vimalakirti prepares to answer tomorrow.
Bandar Padma Sodargye Bandharangara Padma Sodargye Bandharangara Padma Sodargye